Folks, when you read the Criminal Code of Canada and you look at the definition of peace officer, Section C, you will find that they state a police officer, police constable, bailiff constable, or other person employed for the preservation and maintenance of the public peace or for the service or execution of civil process. So let's look at this. On one side you got police, police constables, bailiffs, and constables. And then they use the conjunction or, which acts to include that which would otherwise be excluded. They use a very large term here, other persons. It's very expansive, that term. Who are these other persons? Who can employ them, and what can they do? Let's look at number 2 first, because you'll recognize that. They can be employed for the service or execution of civil process. You know them as process servers. Now let's suppose for a moment that a process server, who can employ them? A, you can. Any member of the public can employ a process server. Who can be a process server? Any other member of the public. Now imagine for a moment you had a process server who was employed to serve civil documents on a police constable, bailiff, or a constable. And this police officer, whoever he or she is, didn't like being served. And the process server says, you can't touch me, I'm a peace officer, I'm fulfilling my duty, here you're served. So the police officer decides to charge the process server with falsely representing themselves as a peace officer for no other reason than the process server fulfilled his duty in respect to the police officer. Do you think police officers, police constables, bailiff, and constables have the right to hinder a process server? Or, if they do that, are they obstructing a peace officer in the fulfillment of his duties? Cops can be served. They've got no right, using their office, using their power, to punish a process server merely for serving them. Now these other persons, what else can they do? It says it right here. For the preservation and maintenance of the public peace. To preserve the peace. Who can hire them? Guess what? You can. Who can employ them would actually be the better term. Who can employ them? You can. Who can constitute these other persons? You can. Believe it or not, you have the power to employ other persons to preserve and maintain the public peace in the exact same way that you have the power to employ other persons to act as process servers. And these people, police, police constables, bailiff, and constables, have absolutely no right to interfere with other persons fulfilling this task any more than they would have the right to interfere or punish other persons fulfilling this task. And I'll tell you why that's important. Because this right here, these two roles, preserve and maintain the public peace and act as process servers, are essentially two sides of the same coin. They all fulfill the same function. Civil process, that's not supposed to be generating conflict. That's supposed to be helping to resolve conflict in a manner that maintains and preserves the public peace. Now, police officers, police constables, bailiff, and constables, they do not like being served process. They don't like being sued, and nor do they like the idea of the people having the power to employ each other to preserve and maintain the public peace. And I'll tell you why. Folks, let me share with you what I think I see happening. Regularly nowadays, the police will breach the public peace if they are enforcing an act or a statute, and that's why Bill C-51 is so terrifying to so many Canadians. It grants such level of power, it's so ambiguous as you might as well just say the police can do whatever they want. And they will enforce these new powers in a manner that breaches the public peace. But what if What if the police were not in fact empowered or entitled to enforce any act or any statute in a manner that breached the public peace? What if that was one of the limits upon which they must operate? Now, I know a lot of them won't like that. They'll say, oh, that makes our job impossible. Guess what? If you need to breach the public peace in order to do your job, you're not doing your job. The public peace is paramount. All of these acts and statutes, all of them are supposed to exist in order to preserve and maintain the public peace. And I have never found anything which entitled the police to act in a manner which breaches the public peace. And now remember, in the criminal code it defines peace officer as these other persons. And these other persons can do two things. One is to service and execute civil process. The police have no right to interfere in the public from doing that. If we all wanted to employ each other for that role, we certainly could. But there's that other role, and that is to preserve and maintain the public peace. Now, what if we were a nation of people, all of whom have made oath and are employed by each other to preserve and maintain the public peace? What if then, if the cops tried to enforce even any of their powers granted to them under Bill C-51, we could draw a line in the sand. We could say, no, listen, here's the line. We have the public peace, you're the police, you go enforce whatever rules you want, but the moment you cross that line, the moment you breach the public peace, our peace officers are empowered to arrest you for breaching that peace. Now the cops will probably claim, well, if that's the case, then we can't enforce these statutes. Guess what? You were never supposed to enforce them by breaching the peace anyways. We never paid you to breach the public peace. You were never employed to do that. And yes, you're supposed to enforce the statutes and acts with respect to the public peace. Not by claiming that you, for some reason, are suddenly free to breach the public peace. And if we had a force of peace officers whose sole duty was to preserve and maintain the public peace, and we drew from those people were drawn from the public, employed by the public, well then it really wouldn't matter what silly fucking bills the government passed, because whatever powers they wanted to grant to themselves, they would still be bound by the public peace. I think that's what they're scared of, is if they realize that the public does in fact have a right to the public peace, they have a right to act to preserve and maintain that, they can employ each other to do so, and they can claim they are peace officers when they do so. And then it really doesn't matter what Bill C-52 in the ass they want to pass. We get to hold them accountable if they breach the public peace. That's what they're scared of, and that's why I'm seeking support for the Canadian Common Corps of Peace Officers.